What you are about to hear is a story that Tom Bower never saw coming. A story that started not in a boardroom or a legal office or a television studio. It started in a kitchen in Montecito, with 2 children, and a book, and a moment that our source says changed everything about how this story ends. Hello friends, my name is James, and you are watching Royal Daily Report, your #1 source for the most exclusive and most shocking royal stories on the internet. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now because tonight we are telling a story that connects the most feared biographer in Britain to 2 children who have never heard his name. And what connects them is something that nobody in the royal world predicted. And if you have been with us from the beginning, you already know. We never hold back. We never pull back. Let us get into it. And before we say another word, if you are not subscribed to Royal Daily Report, hit that button right now. Turn on those notifications. Because this story is developing every single day and you cannot afford to miss a single update. The follow-up coverage we have coming on this story is unlike anything we have ever produced. Subscribe now. Let us get into it. Tom Bower is 76 years old. He has spent 50 years investigating the most powerful people in the world. He has written books that have toppled reputations and ended careers and made very expensive lawyers send very threatening letters that he has absorbed and ignored and moved past without breaking his stride. He is, by any measure, one of the most formidable figures in British journalism. And he wrote a book about Meghan Markle, 430 pages, called Revenge. And for 2 years after that book was published, Meghan stayed silent about it, absorbed it, moved on, the way she had learned to move on from everything. And Tom Bower assumed, the way his subjects always assume after the initial storm passes, that the silence meant it was over. That the book had landed and the world had moved on and Meghan had moved on and the story was complete. He was wrong. And the reason he was wrong has 2 names, Archie and Lilibet. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now because the moment our source describes as the turning point of this entire story, the moment that Archie and Lilibet became the reason everything changed, is coming right now. Hit that button. Turn on those notifications. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this tonight. Subscribe now. It happened on a Sunday morning. Our source, who is close to the Sussex family, says it was a completely ordinary Sunday morning in Montecito. The kind that the Sussex household is full of. Harry making breakfast. Archie already dressed and ready for the day with the particular energy of a 6-year-old for whom Sunday means possibilities. Lilibet still in her pajamas because Lilibet approaches mornings with a measured deliberateness that her parents find both amusing and deeply familiar. And Meghan was in the sitting room, reading, working through a pile of things that had accumulated during the week. And Archie came in, and he was carrying something, a book, not one of his own books, an adult book, one that he had found somewhere in the house. And he climbed up next to Meghan on the sofa, and he put the book on her lap. And he said, "Mummy, why is your face on this book, but your name is not on it?" Meghan looked down at what Archie had put in her lap, and felt something go very still inside her. Because the book Archie had found, the book that a 6-year-old had pulled from somewhere in the house and carried to his mother with the innocent curiosity of a child who simply wanted to understand something, was Revenge. Tom Bower's book about Meghan, with Meghan's photograph on the cover, and Tom Bower's name where Meghan's name should have been. In Archie's understanding of how books work, if your face is on the cover, your name should be on the cover. It was a completely logical conclusion. And it was a conclusion that landed in Meghan with a force that she had not expected. She took the book from Archie's lap, and she looked at it, and she said, "This is a book that someone wrote about, Mummy." And Archie said, "Why did someone write a book about you?" And Meghan said, "Because sometimes people write books about other people." And Archie said, "Did you want them to?" And Meghan said, "No, I did not." And Archie said, "Then why did they?" And Meghan said, "Because they wanted to." And Archie thought about this very seriously for a moment, the way he thinks about things that do not make immediate sense to him. And then he said, "That does not seem fair." And Meghan said, "No, it does not." And Archie said, "What does it say about you?" And Meghan said, "Things that are not always true." And Archie said, "Then why do people believe it?" And Meghan said, "Because it is in a book. And people sometimes believe things more when they are in a book." And Archie said, "But you just said it is not true." And Meghan said, "I know." And Archie said, "So you should write your own book and say what is true, and people can read that one instead." Our source says Meghan sat with that for a long moment. And then she said, You know what, Archie? You are absolutely right. And Archie said, can I have breakfast now? And Meghan said, yes. Go find Dad. And Archie took the book and put it on the coffee table and went to find Harry. And Meghan sat in the sitting room alone for several minutes, looking at the book, thinking about what a 6-year-old boy had just said with complete simplicity and complete accuracy. You should write your own book and say what is true, and people can read that one instead. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now, because what Meghan did in the hours after that Sunday morning conversation with Archie, the call she made, the decision she reached, and the moment that Tom Bower's team found out what was coming, is all coming right now. And you need to be subscribed to get every single update as this story develops. Subscribe now. Hit that button. Turn on those notifications. Subscribe now. Harry found out about the conversation with Archie that same morning. Meghan came to find him in the kitchen, and she told him exactly what had happened. The book. The question. Why is your face on this, but your name is not on it? That does not seem fair. You should write your own book and say what is true. And Harry listened to all of it. And when Meghan finished, he said, he is 6 years old, and he worked out in 30 seconds what we have been going around for 2 years. And Meghan said, I know. And Harry said, are you going to do it? And Meghan said, I think I already am doing it. I think I have been doing it for months without letting myself call it what it is. And Harry said, then call it what it is. And Meghan said, I am writing a book. And Harry said, yes, you are. And Meghan said, and it is going to say what is true. And Harry said, every word. And Meghan said, and people are going to be able to read that one instead. And Harry looked at his wife and said, Archie is going to be insufferable when he finds out he gave you the idea. And Meghan laughed, the real laugh, and said, he already knows. He just does not know he knows yet. Then there was Lilibet. Lilibet's contribution to this story came 3 days after Archie's Sunday morning question. And it came in the way that Lilibet's contributions to most things come. Quietly. Precisely. With the particular focus of a 4-year-old who has been thinking about something and has reached a conclusion. Meghan was at her desk, working on something, and Lilibet came in and stood next to her and looked at what was on the desk, which was pages, handwritten pages, the beginning of the book, the actual words, the true version. And Lilibet looked at the pages, and she looked at Meghan, and she said, are you writing? And Meghan said, yes. And Lilibet said, what are you writing? And Meghan said, I am writing our story, the true one. And Lilibet said, can I be in it? And Meghan said, you are already in it. You have always been in it. You are one of the best parts. And Lilibet said, good. And then she said something that Meghan has shared with several people since, because it has stayed with her in a way she cannot fully explain. Lilibet said, make sure you say the true things, Mummy, because true things are the ones that last. And Meghan put down her pen and looked at her 4-year-old daughter with her great-grandmother's eyes and said, where did you learn that? And Lilibet said, I just know it. And Meghan said, yes, you do. And Lilibet said, can I have a biscuit? And Meghan said, you can have 2. And Lilibet left. And Meghan picked up her pen and wrote, because true things are the ones that last. And that was the sentence she needed. From a 4-year-old girl in her pajamas on a Tuesday morning. That was the sentence that unlocked the whole thing. Tom Bower found out about the book through the channels that someone like Tom Bower uses to find out about things. The network of people in publishing and media, and the celebrity-adjacent world that has kept him informed for 50 years. And our source, who has a connection to Bower's world, says his initial reaction was not what people might expect. Was not dismissal. Was not the confident defiance of someone who has faced legal challenges and public criticism and every form of pushback that a subject can offer, and who has always come through it unchanged. His initial reaction was something quieter. Our source says Bower sat with the information for a day before he said anything to anyone. Just sat with it. The information that Meghan was writing her own book, in her own words, with her own version of the truth. That the 200 pages his book contained about who Meghan was were going to be answered by however many pages Meghan needed to say who she actually is. And our source says what Bower felt in that day of silence was something he has not felt often in 50 years of journalism. Uncertainty. The specific uncertainty of someone who has written the first draft of a story and who is now being told that the subject is writing the second draft herself, and that the second draft is going to be read by everyone who read the first one. Subscribe to Royal Daily Report right now, because what Tom Bower did after that day of silence, the call he made, the private assessment his team gave him, and the moment that our source says revealed exactly how seriously Bauer is taking what is coming, is all in the next part of this story. Subscribe now. Hit that button. Turn on those notifications. You cannot miss this. Subscribe now. Bauer called his publisher first. Our source says it was a brief call. Businesslike. The call of someone gathering information before making decisions. He asked about sales figures for Revenge, about how a new book by Meghan would affect the market for his book, about whether there were any legal implications for him in Meghan's decision to write her own account of the same events. The publisher answered all of these questions, and the answers were not comfortable, because Revenge had sold well, but its moment had passed, had been out for 2 years, had done what it was going to do. And a new book by Meghan, a direct personal first-person account of her own life, told in her own words, would inevitably be compared to Bauer's version, would inevitably be read by people who had read Bauer's version. And if Meghan's version was compelling and well-written and honest in the way that our source says it is, if it contained the specific detail and the personal truth that Bauer's version could not contain because Bauer was on the outside looking in, then the comparison was not going to be comfortable for Revenge, or for Tom Bauer. He called a journalist contact next, someone he has known for years, someone who knows the Sussex world from the inside in ways that Bauer respects. And he asked one question, just one. He said, "Is it good? The book Meghan is writing. Is it actually good?" And the journalist said, "I have not read it. Nobody has read it yet except Harry and her core team. But from what I am hearing from people who have been briefed on it, yes, it is good. It is very good." And Bauer said, "How good?" And the journalist said, "The kind of good that changes the conversation. The kind of good that people are still talking about in 10 years. The kind of good that makes everything written about her before it look like a rough draft." And Bauer said nothing for a moment. And then he said, "Thank you," and ended the call. Our source says that conversation was the moment Tom Bauer understood that this was different from anything he had faced before. Different from lawyers sending letters. Different from public criticism. Different from the various forms of pushback that his subjects had offered over 50 years. Because all of those things operated in the space around his book, challenged it from outside, questioned its conclusions, or disputed its sourcing or threatened its publication. But none of them had ever threatened it from inside the story itself. None of them had ever put the actual subject in the position of author, of someone who could sit down and write the complete alternative version with all the detail and all the personal truth that only the person who lived it can access. Meghan was not going to challenge Bauer's book from outside. She was going to walk inside the story and write it again from the beginning, with everything she knew, with everything she had saved, with everything a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl had given her the courage and the clarity to finally say. And here's the thing that our source says Tom Bauer knows, has always known, that the most powerful resource any subject has against any biography is the truth of their own experience told in their own voice. He has always known this because he has spent 50 years trying to approximate that truth from the outside, trying to reconstruct through sources and documents and interviews and research the interior reality of another person's life. And he is very good at it. He is arguably the best in the world at it. But he has always known that the approximation from the outside, however careful and however thorough, is never the same as the thing itself. And now Meghan is writing the thing itself, with the pen that Archie told her to pick up, with the sentence that Lilibet gave her about true things lasting. With 2 years of sitting with Bauer's version of her story and knowing exactly where it was wrong and exactly what the right version looked like, and waiting for the moment when she was ready to write it. And the moment has come. And our source says Tom Bauer, sitting alone with that knowledge, is experiencing something that his 50 years of journalism have rarely produced. Genuine respect. The grudging, uncomfortable, completely authentic respect of someone who has met an opponent who knows exactly what they are doing. The book is being written, page by page, in the early mornings before the children wake up. In the quiet of a house in Montecito where 2 children are sleeping who do not know that they started something. That a 6-year-old's question about a book cover and a 4-year-old's observation about true things lasting have combined to produce something that is going to change the conversation permanently. Something that will sit on shelves next to Bauer's 430 pages and will be read by everyone who read those pages and will say, "Here is the other version. Here is the inside version. Here is the version that only one person could write. The person whose face was on the cover. The person whose name should have been there. The person who is writing her own story now. Finally, completely, in her own words. Because her son picked up a book and asked a question. And her daughter said true things are the ones that last. And both of them were right. Both of them completely right. In the way that children are right when they have not yet learned to make things complicated. When the truth is still simple. When the answer is still obvious. You should write your own book and say what is true. And people can read that one instead. That is all for tonight, friends. I am James, and this has been Royal Daily Report. If this story hit different for you tonight, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you have not already and turn on those notifications because we are going to be covering every single development in this story as it happens. Every update on the book, every response from Tom Bower's camp, every moment between now and publication day. We will be here for all of it. Share this tonight with someone who needs to hear it. I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and stay royal. Goodbye, friends.